Hey, what's going on, guys? This is going to be my joint review here for both versions of the HGUC Geara Doga. Here we have the standard type as well as the Rezin Schnyder type. I'm just going to review them both at once because they're essentially the same kit with some very minor differences. So we'll just knock them out all in one review and you can decide for yourself which version you end up wanting to get for yourself. Personally, I think if you're painting and you have the option of painting it whatever color you like, then I think the Rezin Schnyder version does give you the better options of whatever everything's packed in the box. Both kits are coming in at the same list price of 1,800 yen, so if it's an option between the two, I think the Rezin Schnyder one is the one to go ahead and get. But you'll see that over the course of the review here. So we've got just a really cool and pretty good sized HGUC kit here. Anything from Char's Counterattack, sort of that era of UC, was pretty large, and so this is no exception. As you saw with the Master Grade as well, that one was also a pretty big Master Grade. How does this compare to HG kits that came out around the similar time from the same series? Well, I've only really ever built the HGUC Geara Doga, and I really like that kit. I'm not sure if I like this one more. I think I still like the Geara Doga more. I still think that's a more enjoyable kit, but this one is definitely a good solid kit if you're a fan of this mobile suit. So let's check it out, and first just take a look at the different accessories that each kit comes with. So let's start with the hands, as that's the first major difference between the two kits. Now, first of them include a right trigger finger, so that's going to be the same. Both of them include a right holding hand, so that's going to be the same, but the difference is going to be in the left hand. They each only have one option for the left hand. The standard grunt type has a holding hand. The Rezin Schnyder type has an open hand. Both of the kits include the standard shield with the Sturmfaust there on the back of it. The connector is exactly the same. You can connect it either onto the back of the arm or onto the side of the arm. This does fold down like that for when that's, I guess, supposed to be firing like that. We have the smoke launchers, if I remember correctly, on the ends of there. Smoke launchers or grenade launchers anyway, a couple little tiny parts that you stick in there for the end of that. Both of them include the beam axe and two different effect parts for that. You have this effect part which is kind of more axe shape, and this one which is kind of more pickaxe shaped. That's the same, but we have a second one as well. With the standard type, you only have the handle, and this is the one that's meant to be stored on the back skirt when it's not in use. With the Rezin Schnyder type, you actually have the effect part for that, so you have this nice effect part for like a standard beam sword kind of looking thing, very similar to like the Shinanju's. That is not included with the standard type. Both of them have the option of either making the standard grunt type head or the commander use fin there on the top, so whichever version you end up getting, you can choose between those. And then aside from the color, this is probably the biggest difference here is just in the gun. So the standard type beam rifle here is just like this, has this clips kind of sticking out to the side. The secondary handle which will fold out like that, and ultimately, I mean, it looks pretty nice. Of course, it's pretty simple, nothing really too crazy about that. It's just an HG standard beam rifle. With the Rezin Schnyder type, you have this option of the beam rifle. So unfortunately, the Rezin Schnyder type does not come with both, so you only have one beam rifle included with each of these kits. Whichever one you end up getting, you only get one beam rifle. So I do actually kind of prefer the look of this one, so another reason why I would personally recommend the Rezin Schnyder type. So once again, in summary, with the grunt type unit, you get a holding hand for the left hand, no beam effect parts, no open left hand, and the grunt type beam rifle. With the Rezin Schnyder type, you get the open left hand but no holding hand for the left hand. You do have an added bonus of the beam effect parts, and you have the Rezin Schnyder type beam rifle. Now, as for stickers on the kit, the only thing that you have is one for the mono eye and then one on the shield, which you saw before, the Neo Zeon logo there. So that's going to be exactly the same between the two kits, but let's talk a little bit about the articulation of them. Obviously going to be exactly the same for the two of them. The head will go up to there, which is really nice, and up underneath there, if you can reach it, like with the HG The Origin Zaku kits and other HG Zaku kits and Neo Zeon and mono eye type kits, you can move the mono eye side to side just a little bit by moving that. The little switch is up underneath the chin there. You then get the head pointed all the way down to there, and so the head works really nicely. That works good. Unfortunately, a seam line across the top of the shoulder here, but we do have a pretty nice shoulder joint. As you can see, it will swing very far out to the front like that. That's really quite nice. This shoulder armor is connected on a ball joint here at the end, so that will be able to move up and down like that. But ultimately, no matter how you move the shoulder armor around, it's really hard to get the arm up any higher vertically than something like that, which is not even 90 degrees, which is kind of disappointing. And over here on the other side as well, it's kind of just the same problem, just the shoulder armor just gets in the way. As you can see, with the actual shoulder part, you have enough space there to move that up much further, but it's just the shoulder armor that gets in the way there. And then speaking speaking of the shield here, that's just on a ball joint, so you can just move that around a little bit as you need. Up underneath the shield, you do have some nice detail there if you wanted to paint that in, do a little panel lining on there. Can bring out some of that detail. Around here onto the backpack, of course, nothing moves here, but you can see where the hard points are for connecting the shield into the back of the arm. The arm itself will just rotate there at the top, of course, and you can just bend the elbow just about 90 degrees, a little bit more than that, unfortunately not too much more. And then the wrist is just on a standard ball joint there. In the stomach section, you really don't have any articulation forward, back, side to side. You just have some rotation here, and that is it. For the skirt armor, you can move those up and down a little bit, but as you can see, you're really only up to about there. So let's see if that gets in the way of bringing the legs forward. It is going to be in the way of bringing the legs forward very high. If you move that knee out of the way, you can get that up a little bit higher. It's going to be starting to pop out that front skirt armor there if you bring that up any higher. Though it is nice, we have a nice double joint there in the knee for a pretty good bend, although I do think, again, probably could be a little bit more than that. Back to the skirt armor though real quick. The side skirt armor will also move up and down a little bit. The back skirt armor does not move at all, but there you can see where there's that point to plug in the inactive beam axe or just the beam axe in its kind of beam sword form there for the Rezin Schnyder type if you don't have the effect part in there. Obviously, you wouldn't really want to have the effect part on while it's plugged into his back skirt. Might look a bit strange. Unfortunately, here in the hip, it's just ball and socket joints, so you can't really get that rotated too much, except for about like that, which is actually pretty fine. I think it's actually pretty good. But moving that out to the side, you can really only get that out to about there, so you're not going to get anything like a full splits, but again, I think it is still pretty wide. So despite the fact that it's just a ball and socket joint, which is usually pretty bad for articulation, it's really not that bad. I think they've done it in a way that they've maximized the articulation that they can get out of that before having to move to a different type of joint there for the hips. The only other thing that you can do with that is you have some rotation there of the hip joint side to side like so. We already covered the articulation of the knee, but I will point out this seam line down the front of the knee, which is pretty unfortunate. And then down here to the ankles, nothing moves for this ankle armor or anything like that. You will have to definitely paint in some of the details like inside the little thruster bell there, which is supposed to be yellow. And then up underneath the feet here is supposed to be yellow. You'll have to paint those in if you want that to be color accurate. That said, really nice detail up underneath the feet though, so that's really good. Articulation of the ankle here will move forward to about there, back to there, not really a whole lot. Side to side as well, not really a whole lot of room for articulation here, but you can get a pretty nice wide stance out of this, I feel like. And just with these big giant feet like that, I don't know if you'd really expect to have too much articulation there. It would be nice if maybe the toe bent, but again, it does not. So for a quick size comparison, here it is compared with the HG RX-782 and HG Geara Doga. So you can see the Geara Doga is going to be a little bit larger, and the two of them do look like they go pretty well together. So they do make a good set if you are collecting the HG kits from Chara's Counterattack. Now the one HG kit from Chara's Counterattack that I would like to eventually get is the Sazabi. If you guys ever built that, let me know what you think of it down below, and if I should take the time to review it at some point if I can. So as you've seen, it does have some seam lines on there, unfortunately, as it is an older HG kit, so that's kind of to be expected, and the articulation is fine in some areas, and I think actually posing these kits is really not all that bad. Despite the articulation being on the surface not really seeming that good, you can still do some pretty good posing with this. But despite those problems, one thing that I love about the Geara Doga, and I also like about these Geara Doga kits as well, is that they feel so really solid, and their size as well, for them to be pretty big size and feeling really solid as well, they're just really satisfying kits to build and to pose up. So that's one thing that I really like about these kits. On the surface, they don't have a ton of detail, but they have some really nice detail in certain areas, like as you saw underneath the feet, like in the thruster bells there on the side of the leg. You have some nice details of like the hoses there in the knees and in the front of the shins. You will have to paint those again for them to be color accurate, but nice details exposed in certain areas is really good. And then on the areas where there's less details, on like the open areas on the armor, if you want to go in and practice some scribing, of course, it's always a good opportunity to go in and just add a little bit of detail here and there if that's something that you really want to do. As for the accessories and everything that you get included with the kits, that's another thing that I really like about them, is that you get pretty much the full range of accessories that you could want. It would be nice if the grunt type did also come with the beam saber effect part, and they both came with both versions of the rifle, something like the master grade kit does, fortunately. That would be cool, of course, but then there wouldn't really be a lot of incentive to have two different versions aside from just the different color. So I can see why Bandai split it up like that, and I think they did it in a really good way that whichever version you get pretty much the full package. It's not like one version is sort of handicapped by not having a exclusive weapon or something like that. So I think there is definitely good incentive to get them both as a set, especially if you're a big fan of them, and they're not really all that expensive. 1800 yen list price, if you're able to get them for around $20 or less than that, I think they're definitely worth it. So again, if you are the type of person who does paint your kits, then it really doesn't matter which version you get, and personally I would say that it seems like the Rezin Schnyder version comes with a little bit more, unless you really want a holding hand for the left hand, or you really prefer the style of the beam rifle of the Grunt type. Otherwise, I would just prefer to get the Rezin Schnyder version. That said, if you don't paint at all, one thing that you might be disappointed about these is there are definitely some parts that are missing colors on this. So like I mentioned with the hoses there in the forearms, the knees, and the front of the shins that are supposed to be colored, but those are not. They're just the same color as the kind of the joint inner frame parts, as well as all the inside of all the thruster bells on the shoulders, the inside of the thruster bells there, on the backpack, on the side of the leg, and on the underside of the feet. Those are all supposed to be colored. On the standard type, they're supposed to be yellow. On the Rezin Schnyder type, they're all supposed to be red. So that's going to be a lot of little color apps for all those little parts that are going to be missing. If that's something that you care about, that's the kind of thing that you might want to paint. Now, just a little word of advice of that, if you guys are not painting the entire kit and you just want to paint in those details, one thing that I see a lot of people doing, especially for like the inside of thruster bells, if it's supposed to be yellow or it's supposed to be red, especially because those are bright colors, you see a lot of people, usually they just paint it directly yellow or they just paint it directly red inside of there, and that's usually not a good way to get very bright colors, especially on dark plastic. In this case you have like dark green and dark blue, so that's not going to look very good. But what you can do to get the colors nice and bright is paint white first and then paint your yellow or red on top of the white, so that will make it much brighter in there. That'll give you a better look for that. So just a little word of advice for those of you guys who may find that helpful. Anyway, that is going to be it pretty much for the review. There's not really too much more else to say about these fantastic kits. Really happy to have them, and I've got some plans, so you guys are going to be seeing these actually pretty soon in the near future for a future project, probably starting sometime later in May, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, guys, if you do have any further questions or comments about these, if there's anything that I missed, feel free to let me know down there in the comments section. But hope the review was helpful for you guys, and with that, I'll hope you all have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.